Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt and welcome back to another short war video, and today we have very big news out of Ukraine, Russia, and China, and let's jump right into it. This morning, Ukraine's launched a rare and massive daytime attack on Russia, which includes cruise missiles and possibly Flamingo, Storm Shadow, and other large weapons. Meanwhile, negotiations have completely fallen apart between US officials and Russia, as Putin refuses to even consider a ceasefire, which has greatly angered US leadership and caused a massive collapse of the Russian stock market today. Meanwhile, Zelenskyy warns the West that Russia's economy is on the brink of disaster and is expected to hit a $100 billion deficit in 2026 as the gas crisis continues to get worse. Meanwhile, in China, Xi Jinping has expanded his political purge to eliminate more top military leaders, including China's second highest ranking general, as fears grow of internal turmoil in the Chinese government. So, very big news today in an ongoing missile attack, a major attack on Russia happening right this minute that also includes Moscow as well. So, let's jump into our first article, which goes to War Translated. And this right here is our biggest story of the day. Right now we're seeing that cruise missiles are currently flying in a massive strike on Russia right now, and in addition, rocket artillery and strike UAVs have joined the attack as well. The green arrows on the map represent missiles, the blue arrows represent jet-powered UAVs, and red represent strike drones. So right here you can see there is a wide mixture of all kinds of different munitions being launched by Ukraine, and this attack is unusual for many different reasons. First of all, it's a daytime attack, which usually does not happen. Usually these attacks happen at night, but this is very unusual. It's happening right in the middle of the day, and you can see there are definitely cruise missiles in this strike, including drones and jet-powered UAVs, all heading into Russia, and in fact, a lot of these are heading for Moscow. So this is a very large and very unprecedented attack happening right this second, and we're hearing rumors that some long-range weapons may be being used for the first time ever on these Russian cities. So this is a very big piece of news happening right now, and we are expecting very large damage to come out of this strike. But moving into our next post here, this one also goes to War Translated, and we even have a video of one of these Ukrainian missiles flying in the direction of Crimea, and we did see that on the map, by the way. We did see a couple of these heading down toward Crimea, and we actually can see the model of the missile in this video footage right here. So let's take a look. This proves that new weaponry is being used in this attack, and it's a very large one. So let's take a look. And right here you can see, there goes the missile right there in the distance. And there's an up-close shot of it right there. That thing is zooming right there, by the way, but you can see, I'm going to go ahead and mute that, by the way. There goes the missile right there. This one was allegedly heading in the direction of Crimea, but that is a Ukrainian missile right there. It's flying through the skies, and that is one of the first videos we've gotten showing that thing actually flying along by itself to its target. This is one of the first videos we've ever seen. So, very impressive to see that right there, and it is on its way to a target in Crimea that is currently not defined in the public's eye, but we will find out soon what this hit very, very soon. But moving into our next article here, this one goes to OSINT Technical, and we learned some more information about that missile that we just saw in the video right there in this post. And once again, just to reiterate this is currently a rare daytime cruise missile strike on Russia, and we are hearing right now reports of missiles over Bryansk and Belgorod Oblast, as well as occupied Crimea that we just saw in the video, and seen here is a Ukrainian Barge cruise missile flying low over the Belgorod Oblast. So as you can see right here in the image, this is a picture of the Barge cruise missile right there, and we actually saw that in the last video. We are suspecting that is the exact same model of missile that's being used. But moving into our next one here, we actually have some information about this cruise missile, and here's what we know about it so far. And according to information we have in the public, the Ukrainian Barge missile is a privately developed drone missile with a range of 700 to 800 kilometers. It's designed for long-range strikes in mass production, and we do know as well that apparently the payload is between 50 and 100 kilograms, which is a pretty sizable payload, and this thing right here is designed to go very far, long range, and also is designed for mass production, so that way Ukraine can pump out a lot of them and use these routinely in attacks. So we are seeing it being fielded today, at least, going to different areas in Crimea and also the Russian mainland. So very big strike today using this new missile right here that is definitely being seen on camera. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to Military News Ukraine. And not only are we hearing about the Barge missile being used, but also we are hearing rumors from Russian monitoring channels, and they are writing that a number of their regions are under combined attacks by cruise missiles from the Flamingo, which is a brand new, very menacing weapon that Russia is scared of. Also the Storm Shadow and Scout missile, the Neptune and Peklo missile drones, as well as HIMARS missiles, and there's even a threat to the Moscow region, as we saw there on the map a moment ago. So obviously, if this turns out to be true, this is a very big and very widespread strike using these very potent munitions, which have so far not been used all in one major attack, and we are seeing that today, that maybe the Neptune, the Flamingo, and Storm Shadow are being used in one large attack, which is very unprecedented if this turns out to be true. But that is what the Russians are claiming right now, now, so we'll have to run with that until we see some more evidence otherwise. But moving into our next post here, this one also goes to War Translated, and not only that, but the Russian monitoring channels are also on edge because 11 Ukrainian aircraft are in the sky, and also, once again, they're expecting Storm Shadow launches. And right here you can see, these are the Russians on their back channels. They are panicking right now, and they see the Ukrainian aircraft in the air, and they are worried that long-range missiles are about to be launched at many different cities inside of Russia. And also you can see over here, there are more alerts of Storm Shadows heading toward the Krasnodar Krai area. And also, by the way, there are so many different regions included in the strike. These missiles could be going anywhere. We're not really sure where they're going right now. And of course, Moscow is included in this strike. So we don't know what's going to be hitting Moscow. We'll probably find out by stream time tonight what that is. And we'll have to wait and see because it could be larger than we're expecting with these targets that Ukraine's picking out. But moving into our next post here, this one also goes to War Translated. And we did see one of our first initial videos of something being hit. And it looks like we see an ammunition depot being targeted in Bryansk by one of these munitions today. So let's take a look at the video and see one of the impacts right here on camera.
Скажем так, главная сирена не орёт, она где-то там орёт.
So right here, this guy is telling us some information here, but you can hear there's some sirens going off in the background once the video loads real quick, and you can hear it right there in the background. There's the sirens. And the Russian here is saying that something fell out there in the distance. And once again, something fell is code word for something struck, at least in my personal opinion. Usually when Russia says debris fell, that usually means that something had a direct hit from a Ukrainian weapon. So something hit out there in Bryansk, but we're not really sure just yet. But that was the video showing some smoke and also the sirens going off. And that was our first signs of a confirmed hit right here on camera. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to Fitex Network. And we've also seen something very unusual this morning about some Russian aircraft movements from Moscow, which may indicate they knew this was coming, or at least they were trying to prepare for it well before it happened. And right here we can see that several Russian Air Force aircrafts, including an IL-76 transport and an IL-96, also a 400 VIP and Tu-214 command planes, were conducting coordinated training flights east of Moscow this morning, and around 15 to 16 aircraft reportedly took part in the drill. And right here you can see these aircraft were going to and from Moscow and also to a neighboring city, and they're claiming this is a training exercise. But I would say, considering this happened literally right before Ukraine launched an unprecedented strike on Russia, this could be a little bit more than that. This could actually be a real movement of the military officials and perhaps even government officials to safe areas, so that way they're not struck by these missiles. So it's up for debate right now what this actually is. It could be actually training, or it could be a real strategic response to the upcoming attack that Ukraine just launched on Russia. So a very big movement there of government aircraft, to say the least. But with that, we're moving into our next article here, and this one goes to AZ Intel. And a lot of people might be wondering, why is Ukraine launching such a large attack and a devastating attack on Russia, considering the US officials just tried to set up peace talks with Vladimir Putin in Hungary? And we have the answer right here in this post. We have learned this morning that the White House has halted its work on a second summit between President Trump and Russian President Putin, according to US officials. And this right here is totally unexpected, by the way. Of course, the U.S. was saying that Putin really wants peace, but at the same time, though, everybody, including us here on this channel, were saying that Putin is simply trying to stall and buy time to prevent these new missiles from being sent to Ukraine, meaning the Tomahawk missiles, and also to try to give himself a quick cash injection in the Russian economy by causing the Russian stock market to rally that we saw a few days ago when this announcement was made about the peace talks. But this, of course, is not really what it was. This was not meets the eye, and today we're seeing that Vladimir Putin was only playing games the entire time, and who would have guessed that? And it turns out the U.S. officials caught on to that today, and now they've canceled the peace talks between Putin and the U.S. president. So totally unexpected, by the way, completely unexpected. I was not expecting this in a million years. And of course, I'm being sarcastic. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to Fitex Network, and we learned some more information about why it was canceled. And we can see right here that the planned meeting between the advisors to President Trump and Putin has been postponed due to a delay following a lack of progress in the talks between Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov, who had differing expectations regarding ending the war. And it turns out it's a lot more straightforward than that, actually. And let's go ahead and jump right into our next post, because this tells us all we need to know right here from the Kyiv Post. Because we can see that Lavrov, who's also known as the Horseman or something like that, he said Russia will not agree to a ceasefire until the root causes of the conflict in Ukraine are resolved, and that is allegedly what he said. So that tells you right there, Russia is not even willing to agree to a ceasefire. And we had heard that Zelenskyy was actually willing to agree to a ceasefire along the current front lines, which shocked me greatly, actually. But it turns out that Lavrov and the Russians won't even accept that, which tells you where their mindset truly is. So the U.S. fell for it again. The U.S. officials fell for this tactic by the Russian officials, which of course was a complete farce the entire time, and once again has been exposed today. So the Russians once again played us, and hopefully the U.S. will learn from this for the third time in a row and not repeat this again with the Russians, because they are not to be trusted, and this is proof of it today. But also, we've heard from Zelenskyy as well. Zelenskyy has made a statement about this entire situation, and he is on point like usual. And moving into our next post here, this one goes to Jim Shudo, and he said just now, Zelenskyy stated to Trump on Tomahawks, he said, as soon as the issue of long-range capabilities became a little further away for us, for Ukraine, Russia almost automatically became less interested in diplomacy, and this is a signal to that very issue. And the issue of long-range capabilities may be the indispensable key to peace. And also Zelenskyy added, he said, the greater Ukraine's long-range capabilities, the greater Russia's willingness to end the war. And as always, Zelenskyy is 100% on point on this issue, because to translate what Zelenskyy said in simple terms, basically what Russia did is they engaged in fake diplomacy simply to hold up deliveries of the Tomahawk missiles that the US president just said, or at least allegedly said, he was not going to supply until the peace talks were over. So right now, this is a pretty big deal right here. So Zelenskyy is on point, and I would say that's exactly what Russia did. They stalled it just so they could try to hold up delivery of those missiles. But hopefully the US learns from this. This is another learning lesson, yet another one, and hopefully this will not be repeated again, because it's only hurting the allies and it's also hurting Ukraine as well. So moving into our next post here, this one goes to Max25. And right here we have some whopping news that the Russian economy is struggling badly today, and in fact the Russian stock market has gone through the floor. The stonks through the floor today in the Russian market, and they've reacted to the news of the halting of preparations for the Trump-Putin meeting with this massive stock price drop. And as you can see right here, look at that. The entire board, except for like two categories, is in the red, and it's big drops, almost 5% drops in several different areas. And it looks like all those gains that Russia got after this peace talks were announced, they have erased all of them pretty much. And in fact, it looks like they're even deeper in the red. So that didn't work too well for the Russian stock market. In fact, that backfired dramatically today, and I expect that this is going to get worse. That's just my personal opinion on that. I think it's going to get worse. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to the Kyiv Independent. And not only that, but also Zelenskyy is warning that Russia faces a nearly $100 billion deficit in 2026, which for Russia, that's huge. But in US terms, that's peanuts basically for a deficit. But we're also hearing that Zelenskyy said, we think already today that next year, Russia will have a significant deficit, nearly $100 billion, like Zelenskyy said. So the Russian economy in the toilet. Like, there's no doubt about that. The big question is, how is the Russian economy staying afloat with all these massive deficits, gas crisis, and everything else? That's the big question right now. Nobody's really sure how it's staying afloat, to be perfectly honest. It could be getting outside aid from maybe China or another country, but nobody's really sure how the Russian economy is still even staying afloat right now, because they are hurting in pretty much every aspect. But it is staying afloat, so I guess we'll find out one day, but there's certainly something more going on here than meets the eye. But that's not the only bad news for Russia, and moving into our next post here, this one goes to Spravdy Stratcom Center, and we've also heard that now that 84% of Russian regions are deeply mired in the spiraling fuel crisis, and let's remember their threats to freeze Europe, and it turns out they're not freezing anything except for their own gas crisis. But as you can see right here, there is massive gas shortages all over the Russian Federation now. 84% of Russian regions are mired by the fuel crisis. So there's no signs of Russia solving this, by the way. I know we keep repeating that, but so far there is nobody coming to the aid of Russia to solve this problem, and we are still seeing gas lines literally out to the streets from these gas stations all over the country. And right now Putin is not even putting any effort to fix this right now, which is obviously going to lead to problems. So we can only assume that all the fuel is being redirected to the Russian military, and the civilians are being left to scrap for whatever they can find. So not going good, and that's more proof of it right there. Not only is Russia facing a massive deficit, they're also facing a massive fuel crisis as well. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to Visegrad 24, and we've also gotten the return of the IL-20 Coot, and it is returned once again. It's a Russian spy aircraft, or a recon aircraft, that's currently spotted this time over Norway. And Norway scrambled their F-35 jets this morning to intercept the IL-20 Coot over the Barents Sea, and the fighters were scrambled to intercept it, and also we heard the jets were launched on alert as part of a quick reaction alert mission, and during the operation, two F-35s identified and tracked it in international airspace north of Finnmark. So right here you you can see, there's a picture of the aircraft. We've seen this thing many times before, and this thing is back once again. We really don't know what it's up to, but it's been flying near Alaska, it's been flying near NATO allies in Europe. We're not really sure what it's doing, but clearly it does have a mission, and it's flying around all over the place. So we can only assume that, according to the name, it must be conducting reconnaissance, but we're not sure reconnaissance of what. That's the big question right now. But moving into our next article here, this one goes to Inside Geopolitics, and moving away from our news from Russia and Ukraine for just a second, we have heard of more turmoil inside of China, because we reported on some of this the other day. But just to reiterate and go over this again, President Xi has removed China's #2 general in an escalating purge of China's military leadership, and the general, which is He Wadong, is the most senior officer to be taken down by President Xi. So there is a lot of political turmoil happening right now inside of China, and it is not getting any better anytime soon. And now we're hearing the #2 general has been taken down by Xi. So not really sure what is happening within the party right now inside of China, but there's clearly some turmoil that we are not being told about that's going on. And Xi apparently is worried about loyalty from his top-ranking officials, and now he's just eliminating and purging them to get them out of the way. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see on this one, but certainly a very big story right now out of China about this massive purge, which is back yet again. So moving into our next post here, this one goes to AZ Intel. So also let's jump into our news out of the Caribbean right now, because we are still seeing a massive US military buildup near Venezuela, and we believe here on the channel that some type of military action is imminent on Venezuela, because there's simply too many deployments happening of the US military in that region for them simply just to leave tomorrow. So all the indications are something's about to happen, and today we have heard that allied countries have been briefed about a possible upcoming escalation in the Caribbean, according to an advisor to the Prime Minister of a US ally nation and one diplomatic source. So that is yet even another indication proving that something is about to happen inside of Venezuela, and we simply don't know what that's going to look like right now, but I think it's going to be something big, and I think that is pretty much imminent at this point, and we're just waiting for it to pop off. So just waiting for that, but also another big indicator something is indeed coming right here in this post. But with that, we're now moving into our next news article here, and this one goes to Current Report, and we also have a shred of news out of Iran today. We have heard the Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei crawled out of his bunker today to make a wild statement that we've never heard before in the history of Iran. He said that the US thinks they destroyed Iran's nuclear industry, and very well, let the US continue to live in its delusion. So, of course, that's par for the course. This guy always says stuff like that, and he crawled out of his bunker, apparently after being scared for months, to come out and say that. So, you know, I guess he doesn't realize that the B-2s can simply return to Iran to take out the rest of the nuclear industry if they wanted to. I guess he doesn't realize that, or maybe, I don't know, like this guy right here is not known for his intelligence, but, you know, it's just a whole thing. Iran's always running its mouth, and it's running its mouth yet again, very unwisely, and it's pretty much just stupid statements as always. But that is our news out of Iran today, coming straight from Khamenei. But with that, folks, that is actually our last piece of news of the video. So before you go, smack the like button and also subscribe to the channel as well if you found the video informative. And once again, we appreciate everybody smacking that like button, because of course that does help the channel tremendously. And also, by the way, folks, we will be back on air tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern to cover the rest of the news throughout the day. And also, if you want to support the channel financially, you can do so on our Patreon page, and the link is in the description below for Patreon, where you can go over there and sign up for a monthly membership, and it could be as little as $5 or $10 a month. Any amount helps the channel tremendously, and we appreciate the Patreon supporters very, very much. But with that, folks, we will see you all tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern on the stream, like I mentioned earlier, and with that, bye-bye for now.